Hello, Mrs. F1.
Hello. Cars. On a track.
Yes.
Real life.
Yes.
It is exciting. The 2023 season has officially begun. I know we did not have an episode last week. Apologies. Life got in the way.
Yes.
But we're back.
Yes.
We have a lot to cover.
A ton.
Yeah, and because we have a ton to cover, and because we're celebrating the first official start of the season, we're going to do a 2-part episode.
Dose.
So what you're listening to now is part 1. Congrats, you've made it this far. And we're going to release part 2 in the middle of the week. And that will be more stuff to cover. But in this episode, I'm really excited because we're covering what we missed with the car launches and the most and all important and exciting thing that happened this week, which was testing.
Yes.
So much to talk about. And I know I love the car launches, and I was like, I want to talk the rest of the car launches. And you were like, no, I don't want to.
It doesn't tell us anything, so I don't get it.
It doesn't tell you anything because you're Mr. Facts and Stats, and I am not.
Okay, I mean, I can appreciate the looks of some of the cars, but let's be real. None of the cars were drastically different looking than what we'd expect them to look.
No, none of them were, but I think like these car launches, they've been changing over the years, and that's kind of why I want to talk about it, because I picked up on some things that were really, really interesting that some teams did that were new, but also were sending like a kind of subliminal marketing message. So I just feel like it's important. So from the last time we all spoke to y'all, the cars that have launched since then have been AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Alpine. That's a lot of teams. It's freaking almost half the grid.
Over half.
Yeah, it is half the grid. Obviously, a lot of these teams stuck with pretty much very similar liveries. If anything, there was just like a slight change in look. I think out of everybody who launched like from that list, Alpine had a bit of a different look, and Mercedes obviously went back to the all black livery.
Different from last year, but identical to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it was a bit different, which I thought was interesting. And there were some trends that I noticed. Once all these car launches launched, biggest trend going around the grid, less is more when it comes to paint.
Of course.
Yeah, even the red Ferraris were finding spaces to take paint off their car. And obviously this has to do with weight. Mercedes was genius because they're like, we're going to go back to our black livery. Actually, they just wanted to take as much paint off as possible. That car is basically entirely carbon fiber now.
Yeah.
Which
Smart.
is insane.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I saw another F1 podcaster talking about, is the FIA or F1 going to have to come out with a rule about how much paint you have to have on the car? Because eventually we could get to a point where they're stripping off like everything, and then it's hard to tell who's who.
I don't think so. I mean, there's weight limitations, both minimum and maximum. So obviously you want your car to weigh as little as possible, right? Power to weight ratio. That's what wins races. So as long as you're not underneath the minimum weight, who cares how much paint you have on your car? I mean, if you can have your car fully painted and have all the most modern aero and, all the other things that you need and still hit minimum weight, good for you. But, in my opinion, it's just being smart, removing paint to try and get your car to weigh as little as possible.
Yeah, I get that, but I think it's because they're taking paint off the car because they need that weight to go in other places, and they're willing to sacrifice paint on the car to add another aerodynamic feature that weighs about the same as like how much paint they take off.
But think about the ridiculous amount of rules that already exist in F1. If they're going to mandate the amount of paint on a freaking car, that's ridiculous.
Well, I think the reason they'd have to do that is because like it starts to get to a point where it's hard to differentiate the cars between one another. I actually did see an F1 photographer just posted this morning. He was taking pictures of the cars coming over the crest of a hill. So really all you can see is like from the nose up of the car. He had it side by side, the AlphaTauri and the Haas. It was really difficult to actually tell which one was which. You had to look really closely at some of the design details on the car to tell which car it was, but it was difficult. And I was kind of shocked by that. Now, obviously, like...
Just get a sticker with a huge logo.
Something I find interesting about Formula One cars is you're looking at these cars on a racetrack, on a race weekend. You look at them from multiple different angles. You look at them from the front, from the side, from above, and from the back. So if the cars start to be stripped of really easy identifiers like color, it can start to become difficult in those quick moments to tell which car is which.
I mean, in my opinion, it's already hard to tell which driver is which between teams, right? Like if I see a Mercedes go by, it's going so fast I can't read the number on the nose. So there's no way I know if that's Lewis or George. Mm-hmm. And yes, they have different colored helmets, right? Yellow. Lewis has the bright yellow helmet, and that's a way to identify them, right? But And maybe and if you're looking at the car from the back, you can't really tell other than usually the advertisement on the wing,
right?
Who's who. But again, you don't need to paint that. It could be just like a sticker, right?
Right, but it's much easier to tell from a huge hit of color than it is from a logo on a
Okay,
car.
So your thought is, in order to make it easier for us, the viewers, to recognize who is who, we should mandate the amount of paint that's on their car.
I'm saying if it starts to get to a point where a lot of these teams are stripping more than 50% of the paint off this car and they're all looking very dark, very carbon fiber, it could become really difficult to tell what team it is. If all the cars are starting to... We already have teams on the grid that share similar color schemes, so it can start to get difficult if you start to take away some of those big identifiers, like the color.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, is it worth mandating paint over that?
I think if it gets to a certain point, yeah.
I don't think so, but agree to disagree.
That's fine. I mean, if you want to look at all carbon fiber cars running around the track that look the same, sure.
I don't care about the looks. That's why I didn't care about the car launches.
One last thing I want to mention about the car launch is something that I put on my TikTok a couple of days ago, which I found super interesting. AlphaTauri's car launch was very shocking to a lot of people, including myself. The way they were hyping this car launch up, they were putting stuff on social media, these videos of a helicopter with a giant box suspended from it. And I was like, wow, they're really going to go all out for this launch. Mm-hmm. When they launched the car on the stream, obviously most car launches have physical people there in person, but the 99.9% of people are watching it on a live stream. It was this cinematic video of this helicopter with this giant box in the shape of a car looking. They had this whole little cinematic movie situation. Cuts to the live of Nick DeVries and Yuki Tsunoda on stage with the car, with models in the background with the AlphaTauri gear on. Obviously, AlphaTauri is a fashion brand.
Yes.
In New York City. You saw that for maybe 8 seconds and boom, cut out.
The live stream was over?
Over. Done.
Was it recorded so you could watch it again or no?
I mean, yeah, you could watch it again. You could go back and watch it again later, like all live streams mostly are.
Interesting.
But it was like, wait, what just happened? This is a car launch. Why did I only see the actual car for a whole 8-10 seconds? It was really strange. And at first
Maybe they didn't want to give away, details about Aero and...
No, this is what I think. So... AlphaTauri, like I mentioned earlier, is a fashion brand. Mm-hmm. It's a very high-end fashion brand that is owned by Red Bull. Okay. Yes, they are a headline sponsor for a Formula One team, but at their roots, they're a fashion brand. Mm-hmm. They launched this car in Brooklyn in New York during New York Fashion Week, which is arguably one of the biggest fashion events in the world.
Yes.
Every year. If there's one thing you know about fashion, and especially high-end couture fashion, is it's in a very, very exclusive space, right? Mm-hmm. especially when it comes to fashion shows. The only way you get to see these fashion shows are a couple of ways. The brand is posting about it on their social media platforms. Fashion magazines are posting about it and writing about it. And 3, the team has like deemed you one of their golden children and you get an exclusive invite to this show. That's the only way you get to experience that fashion world at that caliber. And I think that's what AlphaTauri was trying to do here. They were taking a page out of the fashion world's notebook. They went the way of exclusivity. And how do you make something exclusive? You keep it from the masses. And that's why we only saw the actual car and the actual event that was taking place in New York for 8 seconds. This is like kind of like the secret subliminal marketing message I think AlphaTauri is trying to get across. They're trying to be more like a fashion brand in a way. They kind of combined their fashion show with their car launch, which was smart on their end. Was it beneficial to Formula One fans? Probably not.
Yeah, and who was watching the car launch? Fashion icons? No. F1 fans.
Yeah.
So to me, if that was their goal, that's dumb.
I don't think it was their goal at all. I think if their goal was to go the way of the exclusive fashion world, and that
but I know, and that's what I'm saying. If that was if they thought that's what they were accomplishing, I am willing to bet that they're very wrong.
Yeah,
right? Because what fashion icon was watching the AlphaTauri car launch for the fashion?
Right. That's not that. What I'm saying is they weren't appealing to the fashion masses. That's not what they were trying to do. They're trying to bring that brand and take that car and that brand more in the way of like how they would operate in the fashion world.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
So they want it to be exclusive. They don't want a lot of people to have access to it. They want it to feel like this sought after thing where only a few special people got to experience it. Like, and you create almost this weird like need and wanting more. I mean, after everybody watched that stream, I watched so many live reactions to that stream, and literally every single one of them, when it went dead, they were like, huh, what? That was it? Like, they were left wanting more, which it's like reverse psychology almost.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that form of like marketing, but to me, I think the more likely scenario is the fact that they don't want to give too much away about the car.
No, I don't think that was it at all. I really don't, because they had a whole. I think it was sending a message of a reminder that that brand is first and foremost a fashion brand. Because I think they're starting to have an issue now where people are recognizing the AlphaTauri name as a Formula One team, not a fashion brand. I think it's actually, because do you ever hear of AlphaTauri before they became a headline? Exactly.
Never once heard of them until Formula One.
And
I'm also, you know me, I'm not in the fashion world, so like it may be people who are in the fashion world have heard of AlphaTauri.
I mean, I am super interested into fashion, and I never heard of them before they sponsored an F1 team. And I've seen that team, marketing-wise and social media-wise, make a huge effort to put that clothing first and foremost on a lot of their social media. They've been taking drivers to the stores, doing big events in the stores, using the drivers in their headlining campaigns, having the drivers wear their clothing in the paddock on track instead of like their normal AlphaTauri uniform. They're really making more of a concerted effort over the past couple of years to like remind people like, because that's the whole point of being a headline sponsor, is to lift your brand recognition. That is the whole reason. And I think they are trying to still figure out how that works, because right now that brand's like, oh, AlphaTauri, oh, Formula One team, not, oh, AlphaTauri, fashion brand. Like no one thinks of it that way.
Right.
So I think that's why they did what they did with the car launch. I just found it really interesting, like, a car launch where you only showed the car for 8 seconds and actually had we saw everybody else doing these huge productions, videos, pyrotechnics, Q&As, hundreds of fans. They did none of that. They had a handful of maybe 100, 200 exclusive people there on site. They combined the car launch with the fashion. and they showed it to the masses for a whole 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was very much a fashion event. I don't want to call it like a fashion show because it was in tandem with the car, but it was an event, a fashion event. And I think they're just really trying to gear it in that way.
Gotcha.
I can see your mind literally being like, does not compute.
Sure. That sounds good.
I wouldn't call it like a good car launch, but it was an interesting one at that. But
unique.
After seeing all of the car launches, Ferrari, I think everyone can agree, freaking took the cake on the car launch.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
You are insane for not watching any of these car launches. What is wrong with you?
Let me guess. The car was red with some yellow.
And they put it out on track. I don't think
Shell logo.
anyone has ever done that before. That was so
That I
cool.
was aware of. And that's actually, I saw a lot of memes making fun of it because, like, imagine Plan E for explosion as they're driving around Maranello. I would have died laughing.
It was a ballsy move on their part. It really, really was.
I low-key wish it would have lit on fire.
I
wish everyone would have been safe and okay, but I wish the car would have lit on fire.
I mean, it was a move. And like, but not only that, I think the whole event just really embodied that team. We saw, like we talked about before, Red Bull having people doing Q&As that had nothing to do with the sport. And what did Ferrari do? They brought 500 fans to sit behind and take part. And then they ran the car on track right there, which I don't think anyone has ever done in car launch history.
How are they allowed to do that? I thought F1 really limits what you're allowed to do driving wise with a new car.
I believe once. So all the teams did this, by the way. They just didn't put it on. They didn't put it on live for everybody to see.
Okay.
So you're allowed to do like a preliminary run. It's basically just to make sure the car starts and runs. I believe you can only do 100 kilometers.
Okay, so they could have went like 30 laps or whatever. So yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, I think when they did that, they said they could only do like 5 laps, and Charles did 2 and Carlos did 3. So
okay.
Yeah, I really loved how they did their car launch after watching everyone else.
Too bad I won't win them a championship.
You never know.
I know they're not going to win a championship.
I just thought it was genius. Well done, Ferrari. Sometimes you do some stupid
Congrats
stuff.
on the best car launch and the second best car.
Hey, don't say that until...
It's the second best car and it's not close.
Yeah. Another quick couple of notes I just had about the launches is there were some themes going on. Lots of people took this opportunity to highlight their talent that they have on their team, reserve drivers, academy drivers. Almost everyone did this.
Did they?
Which was interesting.
Who did Ferrari have?
Ferrari had their
Arthur?
academy drivers there. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they had 2 female drivers, which for Ferrari, I'm like, oh, wow.
I know they have a Dino Beganovic, I think his name is, in F3, and he's like really well renowned.
Yeah, they had Antonio there, of course. I mean, everyone loves
Italian
Antonio.
Jesus.
Yeah, but everybody kind of was doing something else besides showing the car, showcasing their talent, but also showcasing like some of their projects. Red Bull with Ford, Alpine. Like
Alpine had 2 cars.
They had 2 liveries.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. They're running one during testing and one for the rest of the season, obviously. I loved I had a love-hate relationship with the Alpine launch because I liked the 2 cars, I liked the presentation, but it went on for forever, and they filled us in on like every single project they're working on ever, and it was just too much.
Yep.
They really made a hard push for showing what they're doing for female in motorsports, which, hey, Alpine,
cool.
I freaking love that you're doing that. Do I need to hear about every single program you're running for women in over an hour presentation? No, I don't. Great. Lead me to a website where I can read about it, but it was just too long. They're introducing a lot of ambassadors to the team, one being very famous soccer player, Zinedine.
Yeah, Zizou. Yep.
Yeah, which was a huge shock to a lot of people. But he's coming on board.
He's French, so.
Right, but he's coming on board as an ambassador in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I mean, Interesting overall. It's interesting to see how these car launches have evolved over the years, how teams are kind of doing things a little differently every year. Before it was just all about the car, all about the livery.
Mhm.
Now it's more like car and livery plus all this other stuff I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you.
Well, this is what I don't like about it. It like suddenly has to become this experience. Just show me the freaking car. I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
why does it have to be a big production? Especially, like, I watched the Red Bull one, and that's probably why I didn't watch the rest of them, because it was like, this hurts me physically to watch.
That one was painful.
Terrible. It was awful. And I'm sure the other ones were better, but, like, I don't get it. Why do you need to do that? It's so pointless to me when almost everybody's there to look at the car, and you talk about anything but a car. I don't have I'm a goldfish. I don't have the attention span. Okay, car, thank you, bye.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you need to strike a good balance when you do these. Some I felt were too long. Some took too long to get to the car. Some showed you the car right away, but then spent the whole rest of the time talking about anything but the car.
I'd be curious how many viewers they lost after they showed the car.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. But like, I think there is a good balance. There were teams that did like 30-minute things that had the car shown at the right time, filled me in on some other things that were actually interesting to me from like a fan standpoint, and then called it a day. And there were just some teams that just went way overboard, and it was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm sitting in like what are those like all hands meetings if you're in the corporate world? Like, you know, you have to go to those all hands meetings
where
at
there's
work.
8,000 people on a team's call, and your camera's off, and you're listening to another, like something completely different.
I need to know none of this except for like 1 10-minute part in this 3-hour conversation.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think they're always fun. They get me excited for the season. Kind of a fun way to start things. Who was your favorite livery, though? We did see Alpine.
I like the all pink. I love that when Racing Point did that, the pink Mercedes. I think it's just it's to the point we were just talking about where you can't really tell car to car. Like hot pink you can't miss it. Yeah. I just think it's so easy to see. It's so different. Like that was my favorite car launch. And I like that they had 2 colors. That's cool. That's the stuff that I like. Okay, show me your car. Oh, cool, 2 colors, blue and pink. All right, done. Bye.
Wow, don't get too excited.
the black Merc is cool. The black Merc is very cool.
A lot of people were pumped about that.
Yeah, I don't know why they left it last year because it looked epic. And the whole paint thing we were just talking about, like, I don't know why they left it. And the the social justice aspect of it as well, like the meaning behind it is powerful. So I don't really understand why they went back to silver other than probably heritage. But heritage is dumb.
Yeah. Okay.
But all the other ones looked the same. Red Bull looked exactly the same. Ferrari looked exactly the same.
No, you're forgetting. Alfa Romeo. They were probably, besides Mercedes, one of the biggest changes to a livery that I've seen in a long time.
What do they look like? I don't even remember.
Oh my God, Matt.
I saw they did that cool graffiti car or whatever it was. That's like a one-off thing.
Yeah.
That's not the true livery.
Yeah. If you're wondering if Matt prepared himself for this segment of the show, it's no.
Again, I don't like car launches.
They did a red and black livery, which Alfa Romeo has historically been red and white. And I think obviously the black paint, like they basically replaced a lot of the places where white were with black. I just think it looks so good. It looks so good. It's definitely the biggest livery change on the grid this year for sure.
Oh, the Haas looked good now that I'm thinking about it.
That's true. Haas did have a decent... I mean, they took one color out and replaced it with black.
Yeah,
so
but yeah,
it still looks good. I think
and instead of doing a stupid production, they literally just tweeted pictures out and they were like, "Here you go." And I was like, "That's my kind of launch."
Because Haas has no money to do anything else but work on that car.
Realistically, they probably didn't even have a budget to make the production. But I like the fact that they just tweeted it out and they were like, "Here's our car. Do you like it?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. Thank you."
Oh my God!
Now I don't have to watch a stupid 30-minute video before I see the car.
I also think the Williams looks really good.
Yeah. The Williams has looked good since they changed to that like electric blue color. You know, was that 2 years ago? That's my dad's favorite livery. It looks awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and they changed the paint this year to be the blue almost looks metallic in a way. I think the past 2 years it's been a little bit more matte, but also the integration of the
battery.
Duracell. Yeah.
Super clever.
So smart. And I love
super clever.
I love this as a designer and as a creative person. This is like really just like light bulb moment for me. We see it all the time. These sponsors that join these teams literally just slap the logo slapped on there. Where will it fit? How much money did they pay? How big do we need to make the logo, and where does it need to go? Like, this was the first time I've ever seen, besides probably the Google Chrome wheels on the McLaren.
Yep, that was clever too.
I've seen a logo and a brand be integrated into a car design and not just slapped on a car. And they did it really, really nicely. The top part of the car is a Duracell battery, and the top of the halo, when you're looking down, it also looks like a Duracell battery on either side. It's so nice. It's so nice. And kudos.
I thought it was really clever. Whoever designed that.
I don't know who it was, but
the intake on the top to make it look like a battery.
Yeah, you need a promotion of some sort. You need to start your own agency that works with teams to integrate brands instead of slapping them on there. I loved it so much. So.
And you know what's awesome is that car will look great in 20th place.
Oh, come on. They didn't they didn't look too bad in testing, but
they're the worst team out there.
Does she notice the things I notice?
All right, let's get into testing.
Yes.
So much going on. Testing is so exciting. If this is your first time really paying attention to Formula One, from car launch to the championship race at the end, or, the last race of the season, you need to know some things about testing, which I feel like we need to mention because they're important.
Sure.
Testing is a tricky time. You can't take everything you see as Bible, basically. Yeah. Teams sometimes hide a lot of things. They won't show their true pace. It's known as sandbagging. And also, even the times that you're seeing, you may see a car put in like a real crap time, and it's just you don't know what they're testing.
Yeah, they could be doing a race pace, full fuel load, hard tire. Obviously, we know what you can find out what tire they're on, but you never know what they're going for. Although there are occasions where you can see, and they usually focus on it when somebody's doing a hot lap.
Yeah.
And everyone pays attention because, we know qualifying is a week away. So the hot laps, you can kind of take that data and say, all right, this might be as good as they can do on a 1 lap pace.
Yeah. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, basically. But it can give us a lot of clues to how these cars are going to perform in the first race. And we saw a lot of that come to fruition, but just to let everyone know. So I feel like if you've never watched F1 before, or you've never watched testing before and you're watching it for the first time, you could see a lot of things and think, oh no, or wow, oh my God. But like, if you don't know, like, testing is like this weird time where you can't believe everything is truth. And really, we only will see the full potential of these cars at the first race.
Yeah,
but
there's so many variables.
A lot of good clues.
There's so many variables to these cars, as complex as they are. They could be testing a higher ride height. They could be testing, like a angle of the front to the back, a rake or whatever that's called. There's so many aerodynamic changes that they can make to the car. Even just, I'm sure you've seen the videos where they use a little Allen key to turn the adjust the angle of the front wing. Like, that makes a huge difference for the aero. And you never know what they're running, what they're setting up. They're basically spitballing because they only have 3 full days to find out about their car and what they need to fix about their car.
Exactly.
And that's the exciting, in my opinion, the exciting aspect of F1 is that the sport understands that these engineers are so intelligent and talented that they're giving them just the minimal amount of track time for this car to figure out what the problems are and how to make them better. And they still will find ways, to shave off a quarter of a second from this weekend to next weekend. Like
they will already be designing upgrades from the results of this test to come for next week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's fun to watch.
But it makes looking at the time board not so important.
Little deceiving.
Exactly.
Yeah, a little deceiving.
Yes.
There are some things that you see on that board and you're like, ooh, wow, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, well, is that real?
Right.
Like you're always like, well, are you faking me out or is that actually real life?
Yep.
So yeah, 3 days of testing in Bahrain, which is where the first race will take place.
Mm-hmm.
It is 8.5 hours a day of testing with a 1 hour lunch break. I just love that that's in there. There's literally
Is it really 8 hours?
8.5 hours a day on the track. Morning session, evening session, one car on the track per team, and the team is usually only bringing and using one car to test.
Right.
So that's another interesting thing. If you're new to the sport, you might not know.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's the name of the game too for testing is laps. Get the miles, kilometers.
All about the data.
It is all about running that car as much as you can around that track. Which plays well into a lot of the teams that are having a smooth testing this year. Red Bull, they look good. They had a smooth run. They didn't do the most laps out of everybody.
I feel like they didn't do the most laps because they were like, yeah, our car's really freaking good.
Yes.
We don't really need to test it, which is like scary.
I know. And Max Verstappen, so usually like drivers will like take turns. Like someone will do morning, someone will do evening, or someone will do one day. Like they take turns. Max Verstappen did his day and a half in the beginning and was like, yeah, I'm good. That was fine. See you later.
Yeah.
And then Checo did his day and a half. Like that's very unusual. We don't often
That
see
should scare the other 9 teams.
Yeah.
I genuinely think, I didn't know what to expect this year. And I'm sure we'll talk about, kind of the surprises. But when it came to Red Bull, it was, you could tell they knew they had a great car. And that's scary coming from, a champion, the team who just won the championship and pretty much destroyed everybody. Like they already have a ridiculously good setup.
Yeah.
Starting out. And there were other teams that looked like they were in need of every second of testing to figure out how to make their car drivable.
Yeah. Max said they ran through their program very easily. They literally have like schedules every day of what they're testing, when they're testing it, for how long. And they ran through it smoothly. A lot of the people on the track, reporters were saying it was really difficult for Red Bull to hide the smiles, but they were all trying to like play it cool when really you could tell inside they were freaking out. And Checo did the fastest lap of testing on the last day on day 3. Again, grain of salt, but that's pretty promising.
Yeah.
That's pretty promising.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and predict that Max and Checo are 1 and 2 after qualifying and probably after the race. But...
Okay, wait till we do our predictions. Jesus.
Okay, sorry.
Oh my goodness. Another team that I would say is surprising a lot of people that looked really great in testing, Aston Martin.
Yeah, scary fast.
Yeah, what is going on? Because they sucked last year.
I was honestly waiting for this because we know how much money Lawrence Stroll is just dumping into this team to make them legit. And getting the big sponsors like Aston Martin and Cognizant and everybody else. It was just a matter of time until they accumulated enough, they paid off enough people to jump ship like Fernando and, I'm sure engineers as well. It was just a matter of time until they spent enough outside the areas of the cost cap to bring in a team that can make a car that I don't want to say will fight for a championship, but it looks like, and again, it's early, it looks like they're head and neck above the midfield.
I mean, Lawrence Stroll said from the very beginning, 5-year plan. He said, we're going to be fighting in the top 3. I was like, okay, good luck. But yeah, they looked good. They looked fast. Fernando was putting that car through its paces. And also even more interesting that they were doing so well with a rookie. replacing Lance Stroll
Mm-hmm.
for testing. If you haven't heard, which if you haven't, where have you been? Lance Stroll has had a bike accident,
Mm-hmm.
and has supposedly maybe broken both wrists, if not hurt both wrists really badly, to the point where he didn't come to testing at all, and we're now questioning if he will race next week.
Yes.
But they had their reserve driver Felipe Drugovich
Mm-hmm.
in the
F2
seat.
champion.
Yeah, F2 champion, and he did fantastic. And I mean, if there's a time for this to happen for him, this is probably great because he got those extra days in that car if he needs to drive next week.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a couple of days and hours under his belt that will definitely come in handy for racing if
Absolutely.
he needs to.
And well, first off, we hope Lance gets better soon.
Yeah, Lance, fix your wrists or something.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I would like to see Felipe race because, he was, I believe, a third-year F2 driver. That's a bit of a senior driver, but winning the championship is impressive no matter how old you are. And I don't think we don't talk enough about how good Fernando Alonso is at his age.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that a 42, almost 43-year-old man can drive the way that he can drive.
Yeah.
And regardless of what you think of him, because a lot of people don't like him, and understandably so, he's done some questionable things in his time in
Questionable?
F1. Yeah, but I mean, borderline
He
illegal
has
things.
done illegal
Yeah,
things.
Right. But no matter what you think of him, he is a phenomenal driver, and somehow at his age hasn't shown signs of getting worse.
Yeah.
So I think that he could be pushing that car into podiums this year. And I know everyone gives Lance crap because, he's daddy's boy and whatever. I think Lance is actually a decent driver. And there were times last year where he was better than Fernando, which is saying a lot because Fernando's a really, really good driver.
Fernando in the Alpine, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, he was doing better than Seb a lot of the time, which was kind of...
Yes. That, Seb was not what he used to be.
Right, but still a multiple world champion.
A four-time world
just
champion,
like
of
Fernando
course.
is, yeah.
But I do think that as long as they keep in, again, this is testing, so you do need to take some of the results with a grain of salt. But I think everybody was impressed with Aston Martin, and Mercedes is struggling enough to where that Aston Martin could be better than a Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. They did have, on day one, some sort of issue where Felipe had to pull over and leave the car. But other than that, that was the only time we saw them. And we know, we've seen so many teams, Ferrari last year, for example, Ferrari power unit, just period, where it's fast, but if it's not reliable, it doesn't do
and
you
it catches
any good.
on fire.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I think they surprised a lot of people. They surprised me for sure.
Yeah.
And if I was Mercedes, like you said, I'd be worried.
And to those of you, who watch Sky Sports and their coverage of F1, Ted Kravitz did kind of his order of what he thought the teams would be in at the beginning of the year, and he had Aston Martin above Mercedes. He had Mercedes as the fourth best team, and Aston Martin as third.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that. How far the mighty have fallen.
Right.
Right? From dominating for 7 straight years to being a midfield team.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy, but I mean, hey, they're on a warpath to be one of the best teams. They're doing a lot of stuff, like you said, building their team. They're building a new freaking factory at the moment. So I mean, for that team, all great signs for them. Another team that was also looking good, who was also expected to look good. I wouldn't say they were surprised, but Ferrari looking very good.
Yeah,
good
second
pace.
fastest car.
Yeah. They aren't looking. I wouldn't say they aren't looking like wow, amazing steps above last year. But they still are looking promising. They're looking fast and still look like they will be competitive like they were last year.
Yeah.
The teams that seem to be struggling. McLaren.
Yeah, I was going to say, out of all of the teams, McLaren had by far the most disappointing testing.
Yeah. They had a lot of issues, and it was not a good testing for them. They were having reliability issues, mostly problems with the strength of their wheel brow. So it's that little piece that kind of comes up the side of the wheel and goes over the top. It helps guide a lot of the air over the tires. They made it too thin.
Yep.
So
Just
it
kept
literally
braking.
was braking, ripping off the car at high speeds. They were using heat guns, just like trying to melt that plastic or whatever it's made
And
out
putting
of.
some like metal bracing reinforcement
Yes.
with bolts and
Using like
yeah,
chisels
that's
to
not a good
scrape.
look.
Yeah, it just
Not a good
didn't look
look.
good. Zach Brown also came out and admitted that they have halted development on the current car that they have brought to testing. Because
Yikes.
when they started seeing results coming back from their testing, they realized that the upgrades they were planning to bring for the next race, and forward, were not going to work with the current car. So they've decided it is better to rethink the car now to get it to work with the upgrades that they know they're going to need,
Right.
than to force the upgrades to work on the current car they have. So that means that the car that they have at testing will be the car they'll run for I don't know how long it'll take them, but however long it will take them until they bring a new version of this car to the
Right.
track. That's gonna suck.
They could potentially be the worst team on the grid a few races in.
Yeah, I'm actually
There
legit
is-
terrified.
There's potential for them to be dead last until they get their new car in order.
Yeah, and if I was Oscar Piastri right now, I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah. I mean, this can happen to any team.
Mhm.
You know, it's just a shame that it happens to McLaren because of everything that happened to Oscar last year. And, Alpine's looking like the fifth fastest team and McLaren's looking like they could be a bottom feeder. Like, I'm sure Otmar is kind of laughing in a back room somewhere.
Oh my God, he's throwing a party in a back room
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. But it's a shame because Piastri is one of the few who's won the equivalent of F4, but F4, F3, F2 in successive years.
He's
That is
generational talent.
generational. It's George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Max would have had they not jumped him earlier, but like that is how talented this kid is.
Yeah.
And now he's driving a car that they are openly admitting is not
That they got wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That they got wrong, and they're rethinking their entire car. So who knows how long it takes for them to get the right car.
Yeah.
And in that meantime, they won't be scoring.
And also, it's really difficult when you're young and you're a new rookie in Formula One. Like,
Confidence is huge.
confidence, but also like you are learning how that car works, how that car drives, how it feels, how it operates. So when it comes to giving feedback to the team, it becomes a little difficult because you're like, I don't know if this is just how this car is,
Right.
or if this is actually an issue. Now that's where you lean on your teammate and ask like, hey, is this what you're feeling? Yes, yes, no, no, that type of thing. I mean,
But it's also tough in that there's going to be one point in the season where the car that he's driving is drastically different than the car he drove the week or 2 weeks before, right? So that's going to be really tough.
it will be hard.
And hopefully it'll be easier because they have a better car, and he'll be able to figure things out more quickly. But imagine it's like being thrown to the wolves. Your first car in F1, they've already admitted is a poop box to put it in PG terms. But like that's we're gonna see how good Piastri is, right?
Yeah.
Like this is gonna be a test.
And we're going to see how good Lando is. I mean, last year he was able to bring that car up into places it should have never been.
I have no questions about. I'll bet you Lando will be able to get close to points even if that car is terrible. He's that good of a driver.
I don't know, I don't know, because it's really terrifying when your CEO comes out to the media publicly and says we got it wrong. He publicly said we are not hitting our targets that we have set for testing. Like, he was not hiding anything, and that's terrifying.
But think about it from a cost cap perspective. Basically, all of that money is now just burned into the trash, and it counts against them for this next car. Like back in the day, had Mercedes done this before the cost cap, they got their car wrong, they would just throw an extra $50 million more than everybody else and catch up, right? You can't. So at what point does McLaren think like we screw the season up? It's done.
Yeah, there is a certain point in the season where you have
Right.
to say that.
Right.
And like we saw that happen with Mercedes last year. They literally were like, okay,
Mhm.
we're gonna continue to bring upgrades, but there's a certain point where we can't do it.
We just need to work on next year's car because
Yeah.
there's no point in wasting our time.
Maybe that's what all those little chrome logos are all over the McLaren. They're like paying for each one of their mistakes.
Yeah, but again, cost cap.
Yeah, I know. It's I don't know. It's just all I have to
They're in
say
trouble.
is it's
They're in
scary.
trouble.
Yeah, they're in trouble. If I was Lando right now, I'd really be questioning my decision on my very long contract that I extended with them. Lando obviously has proven time and time again how talented he is, and I think McLaren has been on the upswing for the past couple of seasons. It's been looking very good for them after being down with Williams for so long. But if I was Lando, this would be very scary for me to see.
Well, if there's one thing we've learned in Formula One is that contracts mean nothing.
Oscar Piastri.
Literally, contracts
Point A.
mean nothing.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about this last night watching Drive to Survive. I think that when Lewis retires, it does not matter how many years. It doesn't matter how many years are left in Lando's contract with McLaren. Hi, Angel.
Our dog is
He'll just abandon ship and go to Mercedes.
Yeah, I don't know.
'Cause
McLaren has done a lot for him, though. I mean, I know. I don't think
How
he'll
much
stay
money
there.
did we just learned in Drive to Survive? How much did
Yeah.
Alpine invest into Piastri's career?
I know. I don't see him jumping ship like right now,
Championships are more important than
but
loyalty.
all I'm saying is he obviously has put a lot of faith in McLaren over the past couple of years, and that's been proven by him signing multiple extended contracts with them. So if I was him, I'd be questioning, can we go the distance? Like, I thought you guys could, but now we're in this new generation of car, and you guys are not. You're sinking. You're not swimming.
Yep.
So that could change his view. I did see that Will Buxton said he saw Lando Norris hitting, not like aggressively punching through a wall, but leaving the garage and hitting a wall with his fist in frustration. So that's not good.
Yeah, well, that happens. There's years that, Ferrari's gotten cars wrong. I think previously McLaren has actually done this, and they were bottom feeders in their
That's how they ended up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, it's difficult because Piastri and Lando are great drivers, and you don't want to see them in a bottom feeder car.
Mm-hmm.
But, these things happen, and when the cost cap is involved, it becomes that much more detrimental.
Right. Yeah. Another team that wasn't looking as bad as McLaren, but wasn't looking fantastic either, was Mercedes, unfortunately.
Yep.
They just seemed to, it was very up and down for them during testing. You would hear them have days and they were like, no, today was good. But then they had some issues, looking like some reliability issues maybe coming into play there.
That's shocking to me because the Germans know how to make reliable stuff. So the fact that this car isn't quite as reliable as what they're used to, that's problematic.
Yeah. They also said they admitted that they've lost some downforce on the front end of that car. They're not sure how, but they're trying to figure out how they can get that back. I watched an interview with Lewis last night at the end of testing, and he said it's been interesting. And Lewis Hamilton's a pretty positive man. So for him to speak not so positively about his weekend, it's not good.
I said this last year on our podcast, and this only confirms it even more. I think without Mercedes being able to spend $40 million more than anyone else, they can't compete.
Yeah.
And I think that Lewis was convinced to jump from McLaren to Mercedes 11 years ago, however many years ago that was. I think they told him we will spend $40 million more than everyone else. And that is what got him. I don't want to say that. It didn't guarantee his.
He saw the potential in what they could deliver when it came to development.
And how they could outspend everybody else. And that's how he got 6 of his 7 championships.
Yeah.
And not to say he's not a good driver. He's a great driver. He had to beat his teammate every year, and he only lost to his teammate once throughout those years. So at the end of the day, discovering now that cost cap constraints are preventing Mercedes to spend more than everyone else, I don't think they're nearly as impressive as what everybody thought in this powerhouse of, engineering dominance. It's like, well, no. When everyone's spending equally, it seems like Red Bull has their stuff figured out and not many other teams do.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally true. I think we're seeing them having a really hard time dealing with this cost cap and like having to think outside the box and not having to think by like, okay, what more money could we throw at this to make it better? They're having to ask themselves, okay, what else can we do to make
They're not
this better?
efficient. They can spend a lot, but they can't spend efficient.
Yeah.
And Red Bull can.
But we did see it was impressive from them last year, how they were able to take that car from the beginning. And by the end of the year, it was looking pretty good.
They won a race with it.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, I have no doubt that they can make changes. It does sound like they are better off than they were at the beginning of last year. They've solved the bouncing problem. There's no more porpoising. But they still are not where they want to be or expected to be by this point.
Right.
And they did lose some running time. They had George had to pull over. There was like a hydraulic situation.
Yep.
So yeah, I would say Mercedes and McLaren, the two M's, just like not looking fantastic. The other teams, there were a bunch of other teams that were looking good.
I think the rest of the teams were, other than, Haas maybe did a little bit better than everyone expected, but I think everybody else was just kind of right where we expected them.
Yeah, Williams is looking good. They didn't have many reliability issues.
I mean, they're looking good in that they didn't break down, but they look like they are the slowest car.
Right, but they're looking slower, but could this be their year where they're starting to build a little more? AlphaTauri looked okay. They don't look great, but they looked kind of where they were at last year. The one team that everyone seems to be a little confused about is Alpine, which is interesting to me because they were very strong last year, showed a lot of great promise. Obviously, they have a new driver in Pierre Gasly, taking Fernando Alonso's seat. They did the second least amount of miles on the car. The team seemed upbeat and happy with testing, but we didn't see anything significantly like wow. They didn't have a ton of running time, which is usually an indication that there's issues. But when they were asked about it, they were like, no, everything's going great. Everything's fine. Are they sandbagging? What's happening here?
It could be. My guess is that there's issues there that they aren't trying to make public. I don't think any team is willing to give up data because they think they look good. Right? I mean, even Red Bull, as good as they look, still got the mileage in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to me, you can't not get the data because you think you're set. I mean, that's like just Icarus, that prime. No team is that proud, like to be like, oh, we're so good that we don't need to acquire this data. I think that Haas might be faster than them at the beginning of the year.
Interesting.
Which would be great for the American fans.
Yeah.
But they all, like you said last year, they were a good team. They had a quick car.
They were quick.
They were quick in a straight line.
Yeah.
And they have two fantastic drivers.
Yeah.
So
obviously, it may be a little bit of a learning curve for Pierre at first, but like he's talented. I think he'll be fine.
I think he's going to figure it out, and he doesn't have the pressure of the Red Bulls.
Right. There were two very visible problems that they had in testing. One, not a real big deal. The rear mirrors kept falling off. Apparently, the mirrors are much larger this year than they were last year. So having a little bit of a hard time keeping those on. But another problem they had, which I thought was very interesting, I don't think I've ever seen this, their rear axle. So when they were doing pit stops, they were having a hard time getting the rear wheels off the car. It was becoming so much of an issue that they had to fix it. Like they literally like retired the car to fix it. That something with the rear axle apparently causes this issue, but they literally couldn't get the tires off.
Yeah, that's a pretty big problem. I mean,
yeah, obviously that's a huge problem.
Yeah, that's something that they're going to need to figure out before that needs to be 100% solved before this weekend.
Which they've claimed they've fixed. They've solved the issue. It's no longer an issue. It was a tweak and they're fine.
Okay.
But I've never seen that happen before. Like, you're used to seeing cars like hydraulic leaks or, problems with aerodynamics, but like problems getting the actual tires off the car, that's a little interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I love watching testing. It's a fun time. It gets you really excited. for what's to come. And it is also cool that it's at the actual track that we will be racing at next year. So a lot of the teams do run next week. A lot of the teams do a lot of testing pertaining to what they're planning on running for the race. And there's a new compound of tires this year that's coming. And I know a lot of the teams were dedicating a lot of time to figuring out which tire is going to work best for them next week. So, really interesting, but gotta love testing. Yeah. It's so full of drama and speculation, and I love every single
I was going to say, that's the cool thing about it, is that there's stuff to get excited about for each team, because sometimes, K-Mag will throw in like a P3 time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is awesome to see. But then you also are like you said, a lot of these results you just have to take with a grain of salt. And it makes it fun to be like, which result is truly indicative of a team's pace, and which result can we just throw out the window?
Who's actually showing their hand?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As Christian says, everyone pulls their pants down and shows everyone what they got, or whatever ridiculous thing he said.
What a great quote from Christian Horner. I mean, yeah, you're right. It is. But like, also it's interesting because when you're having issues, you can't hide it.
Yeah.
It's so like McLaren for like, this is true. And like, when you look at years back, when they did testing, they used to cover the garages up. Like, you couldn't see anything. And now you have to keep the garage open. That's an actual rule. So there's like, I think the teams have gotten more creative on how to hide things. And it's just interesting because, it's just like, is this real? Is this not real? Could they be sandbagging? Could we see them in the race next week and them just blow us all away?
Yeah.
It's very rare, but it happens.
It's very speculative, and people love that.
Yeah. I did also hear people speculating that maybe Mercedes is sandbagging right now.
They said the same thing last year, and look at them.
It's because they've done it so many times. And they like undersell themselves a lot of the times. But yeah, like, I'm just gonna throw that one in there before we end. They're
gonna say that every year until Mercedes wins another championship, and they'll be like, "See, I told you." It's like, you said that for 13 straight years. Like,
everybody loves a good sandbag. It makes it interesting. Joining us for part 1 of episode. Part 2 coming out on Wednesday. We'll be talking more specifically about the first race of the season. I'm so excited.
Let's go 2023.
Lights out and away we freaking go. So yeah, Wednesday, keep your eye out for that. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review if you feel so inclined, and we will talk to you on Wednesday. See you then. Bye.